Okay, people, welcome to Investigation 14. This is Investigation 14B. French and Haitian Revolution Historical Research, a comparison. Let's take a look at the directions in yellow. Number one, read the questions first. Number two, as you read each paragraph, underline the answer to that question. And finally, number three, type your underlined answer in your own words in the boxes that follow. Let's take a look. All right, we're going to read this little blurb about the French Revolution, and we're going to highlight what we believe to be very important, which we need to remember. The French Revolution, 1789 to 1799. The French Revolution was a political revolution during which the lower and middle classes in France, frustrated over social, economic, and political problems. Social, day-to-day life was a struggle. Economic, they lacked money for security, and political problems and unfair government. In the country, inspired it by Enlightenment ideas, remember those were reform ideas to make life better, they overthrew King Louis XVI and tried to institute a more democratic government. All right, lower and middle class in France frustrated over social, economic, and political problems. I'm going to highlight that. They were inspired by Enlightenment ideas. I'm going to highlight that. And they overthrew King Louis XVI. I'm going to highlight that. What do they want? A democracy, similar to what we have in America today. And the rest of our research should reflect these general ideas. On the left-hand side, you can see the image of the depiction of the storming of the Tuileries Palace on August 10, 1792. And on the right-hand side, the storming of the Bastille and the arrest of the governor, M. de Launay, on July 14, 1789. You can see these are two images of the violent reaction of the lower and middle class, who were frustrated over money issues, day-to-day living your life issues, and unfair government practices. Let's take a look. All right, first what you would do is watch this link, The French Revolution in a Nutshell, to remind you of a previous video we watched about the main ideas of the French Revolution. So you can pause this video now, click on the link, and come back to us after the 2 minutes, and we can begin reading the questions. You go ahead and pause this now. Okay, welcome back. Let's take a look. Just as we saw in the directions, read the question first. As you read each paragraph, underline the answer to that question, and then you type the underlined answer in your own words. Let's take a look here. Here's our 3 questions, that we need to read first. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Number 1, identify 2 causes of the French Revolution. Okay, let's take a look. So, how did this all begin? For hundreds of years prior to the Revolution, French people, like most Europeans, were divided into 3 social classes: clergy, the church; nobility, the rich; and the lowest estate, the commoners, which existed to serve the other estates. Above all was God's gift to mankind, the king. All right, 2 causes. Well, it says here that the lower and middle classes in France were frustrated, right? And they tried to overthrow the king. So in reading this, the commoners, which existed to serve the other 2 estates. So I'll underline that's 1 cause. And above all was God's gift to mankind, the king. Here's another cause: unfair government. So now I have those underlined. That's the answer to number 1. I'm going to type it in my own words. Identify 2 causes of the French Revolution. 1, the commoners lived an unfair life. And number 2, above all was God's gift to mankind, the king. The government, or, king, was an unfair system for the people. Okay? So I read the question, and as I read this paragraph, I found the answer to the question I underlined. And then I take those underlines and I put them in my own words here. Let's take a look at number 2. What movement led people to question the old unfair authority? So now we need to identify a movement. But this hierarchy was being questioned by the Enlightenment, a movement of intellectuals, educated people, who promoted the use of reason and science. Revolutionary ideas began to spread to the public. Okay, so now, what is the movement? The Enlightenment, a movement of intellectuals who used reason and science. Let's underline that. Okay, so what movement? Movement was the Enlightenment. Okay. Using reason and science to solve problems. Okay, this was different. We're not just listening to an unfair king or an unfair government system who set up unfair social classes. This is different. The Enlightenment is using your own educated reason, logical reasoning, and science to solve problems in your own life. Okay, now let's take a look at number 3. What actions did the rebels take during the revolution? So now we need to take a look at actions. We're looking for actions. Let's take a look here. In the 1780s, when an economically broken and split monarchy tried to increase taxes on the commoners, okay, so the upper class is trying to raise taxes on the poor, resentment reached a new level and riots began. Okay, that's the first piece. On the 14th of July, 1789, revolutionists, they stormed the Bastille. This is a large castle in which if you were poor and you couldn't pay your taxes, they would take the oldest male of your family and bring them there to be tortured. So on July 1789, revolutionaries stormed the Bastille fortress. Okay? A symbol of the royal power. This date is marked as the beginning of the end of the old monarchy and became France's Independence Day, even though the king was beheaded in 1793. Oh my goodness, the king was beheaded. They cut his head off in 1793. Okay, so what actions did the rebels take? 1, they rioted. 2, they stormed the Bastille castle. And number 3, the rebels beheaded the king in 1793. Okay? Now let's take a look at the next question. What was the radical change that took place during the French Revolution? We're looking for a radical change, a huge change, a significant change, a noteworthy change. Let's look for it. Shortly after, the French adopted a universal declaration which stated that men are born and remain free and equal in rights. This was a radical change, even though it left many people out. So here's our radical change. Okay. What was the radical change? The French created a new government which gave people more freedom and equality. Okay? I read the question. I found the answer and underlined it, and I typed it in my own words. Okay? What was the terror is the next question that we're trying to answer. This was a radical change, even though it left people out, but the French Revolution was far from a smooth ride. Actually, it was a bloodbath, which led to external and internal wars. The newly introduced guillotine worked overtime, beheading tens of thousands of French during the period known as the Terror. Okay, so now here's our answer. What was the Terror? A period of time where tens of thousands of French people were killed by beheading. Okay? And what kind of government did France end up with at the end of the entire revolution in France? Well, in 1799, the revolution ended when a military commander by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte, he seized control of the French legislature or government, eventually declaring himself emperor. Okay, so an emperor is a form of monarchy. That's another king. So this entire system started with an unfair king. Did it end with an unfair king? Although the revolution began and ended with a monarchy, a king, it had a crucial impact on Europe and world history and laid the foundation for a modern state governed by the people. Okay, so it was a different kind of monarchy, although it was a monarchy. Although the French Revolution ended in a monarchy or king, the revolution here, I forgot to underline it, let me show you, there we are, right? The revolution caused the power of people to be included in the king's future decisions. Okay? And we call this a constitutional monarchy. And that's a new form of government that was created out of this revolution. Okay? So now what you're going to take the rest of the time to do is you're going to take a look at this timeline about all the revolutions that occurred before and after the French Revolution, and you can answer these 3 questions. Then you're going to take a look at the Haitian or Dominican Revolution here, and the French-controlled part of this island, originally called Hispaniola by Christopher Columbus. The red side is the French-controlled Haitian side, and the right side is the Spanish-controlled Dominican side. Okay, and you're also going to watch the short video in blue, and you're going to look at the questions, and you're going to read them and perform this activity the same way that I just performed the French Revolution. Okay, and then once that's completed, you're going to take a look at this part, read the question first, underline the answer in the paragraph, type it in your own words, and you're going to scroll down to the bottom where we're going to look at the similarities between the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. So you're going to fill out the grid, left, far right, and then both wanted. The social class in France, the social class in Haiti, which suffered, what do they want? And finally on the right, describe the level of violence, type of violence in France and in Haiti, and how is that similar? Okay, this is an introduction to comparisons between the French and Haitian revolutions. I hope this helps.